Hello, welcome to the Millionaire Woman Show, where we'll be discussing leadership, business, and human potential, inspiring you to live rich from the inside out. Unlock your creativity, stretch out of your comfort zone, break through your barriers, take inspired action, and achieve epic results. Now, here's your host, two-time best-selling author, speaker, and certified executive coach, Deborah Kasowski.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Millionaire Woman Show podcast. I am so excited that, our special guest and I have been chatting it up, and we probably could talk all day, but I thought, we maybe should get started so we can share a little bit of our conversation with you. So you might mistake today's guest for Superwoman, and if you do, you will not be alone. Alissa Daire Nelson is regularly featured on television news segment, inside major blogs, and publications on podcasts all over the globe. She's an accomplished success coach, speaker, host of Maximize Your Strengths podcast, as well as published author of the new hot book, From Frustrated to Frickin' Awesome, 4 Steps to Achieve the Success You Were Wired For. But more than anything else, she's an exceedingly proud wife, mother of 2, who loves helping others discover how to make their businesses and relationships thrive in harmony. Alissa, welcome to the show.
Deborah, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to chat with you and to talk with you all about, we have such a similar background. And so I'm really excited to talk a little bit about that and whatever else you have on the plate today. Let's do it.
Well, I'm really excited, and I actually forgot to talk to you about, is this the Strength Finder that you're referring to?
Yes.
When I read
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. So that the tool that the Strengths Finder is. So that's the book written by Tom Rath that explains and gives definitions and all of the Strengths Finder themes that are associated with the profile itself. And so most people now take the profile online, and when you do that, it's $15 versus $25 or $30 for the book. In the book, you also get a code in the back to take it as well, but you get a digital download. So if you're a Kindle reader anyway, just getting the code online and taking the profile online, is a little bit less expensive, same profile, and you get a digital download of that same book. But yes, so that's the main tool that I use in my coaching practice.
Okay. So I'm going to put this aside just for a moment, but I forgot to tell you, because I wanted to share with you some of my top strengths.
That's my favorite thing. So yes, I would love that.
But I really want to just take a step back to what we were talking about before we came on the show, that our backgrounds are very similar in the fact that we have a background in nursing.
Yeah.
And I just want you to tell us a little bit about that and that launch to entrepreneurial world.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing for anyone who's listening or watching us on YouTube, for them to realize that where you've come from, when you take that leap, that you are not discarding everything that came with you. Because, we were talking and I'm like, do I still like the part of nursing? And what I love the most is the investigative part, the really asking those great questions and really thinking things through, that critical thinking. So for me, what I do when I'm working with coaching clients and things like that, I am like always thinking about, what if we did this? What would happen if we did this? And, your brain is always on that kind of investigation mode, or how do I make this work? Or if I challenge myself to do this and step out of this comfort zone, what are the risks? How do I mitigate the risks? So a lot of those skill sets are carried through, and I like to call it the golden thread. But I want to hear your story and for you to share that with our listeners of how your transition and what made you have that shift.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I one of my big, because I have lots of soapbox issues. use, is that your education is never lost. It's never wasted. You hear some people go, oh, I went to college and I got this degree and now I'm not using it. I totally wasted that. And that is never true, because what you learn along the way is so vital to you, to the fabric of who you are, the richness of who you are. And, so for me, as I help people identify what their uniqueness is, it comes from 4 areas. It comes from your life experience, which is outside of education. You can still learn from it, right? It comes from your actual education. And I include like the books you read, the conferences you go to, all of that, your formal education. It comes from your StrengthsFinder profile, of course, and it comes from your values. And so that is such a part of who you are. And I really had to process through that, because I have not only a nursing degree, I also have a degree in dietetics. And my first career, I spent 8 years as a registered dietitian, went back to nursing school, and then was a bedside nurse and then a care coordinator and those things, and then left that for entrepreneurship. So I left not 1, but 2 4-year degrees for entrepreneurship. But all of that is part of who I am. And now I get to bring those pieces of me into my coaching practice. And the question that you asked was, how on earth did I make that transition and why? And, as I was in nursing, entering nursing, really, I also went through a divorce. And I live in Minnesota, where nearly all the nurses are unionized. And it was coming up on that 3-year contract, and there was murmurs of a strike. And not only had I just started in my nursing career, so I was at the bottom of the seniority totem pole, but, I also didn't have, having just gone through a divorce, I fortunately avoided bankruptcy, but I didn't have any money in the bank. And I was terrified that if the nurses did go on strike, even for a week, I wouldn't be able to pay my bills. And so that's what propelled me into entrepreneurship, is I needed a plan B. And then I fell in love with it. And, here we are today.
So what did you do to prepare for that transition? Was it like a big cut and, away you went? Or was it that you saved or eliminated debt? Like, what are some of the strategies that you use to help make that leap?
Yeah. So, I do believe that your strengths do to help you decide how you go about it. There are people who would have saved and really, had that 6 months of income ready. I am not that person. I am a take a leap on faith and an investment in you, take a risk on you sort of woman. And so I just went full bore. I did build that business as a side hustle for a year or a little more. And then I switched nursing positions, cut down my hours, and then did that again before finally leaving nursing permanently. So I did do a stepwise sort of graduation to doing my business full time. But eventually I was just like, you know what? I can't split my energy anymore. I need to have focus on one career and one focus. I still have my nursing license today, so I didn't let that lapse. And not because I think I'll ever go back to nursing, but because the continuing education now, because I'm not tied to a particular organization, I get to do whatever continuing ed I want to maintain my nursing license. And so I choose continuing ed that will help me in my coaching practice. So a lot of the mental stuff, spiritual health, those kinds of things that will also help me in my coaching practice. And so it's fantastic. And I don't promote that I'm an RN and also coaching, a coach. But for me, my nursing degree and my nursing license is something that is important to me. I worked really hard through nursing school. I had 2 small kids and a marriage falling apart, and I graduated with a 4.0. Like, darn it, I am proud of that nursing degree.
Yeah. And you know what I really hear in your message, and I think people need to realize that what this leap to entrepreneurship gave you is choice.
Yeah.
And, in a previous guest in a previous show, she talked about freedom. And what I hear is not only the freedom, but I also hear that choice. And so many people get to a place where they don't think that they have a choice.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to remind people that you always have that choice, whether you choose to do nothing, which is a choice, and they think, oh, no, that's not a choice. I didn't make a choice.
Yeah,
it is. You chose to take no action.
Right.
Versus taking the action that you did and giving that opportunity of choice. Knowing what you know now, do you wish you did it sooner?
So, interestingly enough, when I was a dietitian, I was probably 3 or 4 years into my career, and I tried the entrepreneurial route because as a registered dietitian, your paths are basically a clinical dietitian, food service director, or that kind of thing. That's kind of your clinical direction. But we have an $8+ billion nutrition, weight loss, whatever, business industry out there in the US here. And I don't know what it is in Canada, but I mean, it's huge, right? So it's possible for a registered dietitian to go into entrepreneurship. So I thought, well, I'll start consulting. And I don't think I had the correct guidance then. I didn't even know where to look. And I also didn't have the marital support. At that time. And as much as I have worked my tail end off in my coaching practice to launch it and to really create a brand of my own, my husband, I'm remarried now, my husband gets as much credit because he has been a rock for me. And not everybody has that great support in a spouse, but if you have that great support someplace, man, does that make that transition so much easier. So his support gave me courage to take even bigger steps.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, let's go there. Because I'm sure there's many listeners out there wondering, about that support that they need, that circle of, the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. What is support? And support means different things to different people. What does it mean to you when you need the support from a partner or the friends that you trust around you?
Yeah. It's different for every person. And there have been times where I've wanted different kinds of support from my husband. And I've had to specifically ask for that because how he's wired is he's the stable rock, right? And so his support is the consistency. And, when I tell him I want to launch this new product, when I launched my podcast, when I was like, oh, by the way, I'm going to write a book. And he's like, what do you need from me? Right? Like, it's just, he's just that quiet support, but he's not super outgoing. And so when I want him to come to a networking event or a conference with me, he's like, I don't really want to do that. And at first I was like, was that because you're not proud of me? Right. And that's not it at all. Unfortunately, we have such a great relationship that we can just say, well, this is how this feels to me. Like, is that what you're meaning here? And he's like, no, it's not my gig. Like, you're the woman who loves to go into the middle of a room and like meet everybody and talk to everybody. He's like, that's just not me. And it's not that I'm not proud of you. It's just not my gig. Right.
Yeah.
So, understanding and now that, having gone through that, I understand, okay, that's just not the support I'm going to get from you. But if I need that support, guess what? I'm going to call a girlfriend of mine who is just as like, hey, yeah, let's go to this thing. And, I'll hoorah with you. So that's why the 5 people you surround yourself is 5, right? Like, no one person is going to be your everything. So what parts do you need personally for that support? And I think it does go back to sort of love languages too. I don't know if you're familiar with the 5 love languages.
Yeah.
But my primary love language is words of affirmation. And so it is important for me to hear that positive feedback from people. And I do get that from my husband, but I also get that from close friends. I get that from clients. And so I don't expect him to be my everything because that's not fair to put that on him.
Yeah. And I love how you shared that realization that, you know, we think that our partner or spouse or your significant other needs to be a certain way to demonstrate that support, but also to really understand what works for them might not work for you. And that it's really important to be in touch with that, but also to, like you did, clarify, am I reading something right?
Mm-hmm.
And being okay that it's not their thing and not forcing them to put that square peg into the round hole.
Yeah. Yeah. Because how, like I said, it's just so unfair to put your needs as an expectation on somebody else. And now if he were to completely shut that down and say, well, I don't think you should go to these things because I don't want to go with you, or, that's a whole nother conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But, for him to have this space to say, this is not something I'm comfortable with. I will make dinner every night while you sit at the computer and write. I will. And these are all things he did for me while I was writing the book. And, he cleaned the house. I mean, he did everything. And this man works a full-time salary job. And so, I also, as a woman, we tend to guilt ourselves to death, right?
Yeah.
I had to really process through some of that. And he, again, with that consistency and that sort of quiet support, he's like, it might be 80-20 right now. It'll shift. Don't worry. Like, it's just that calm, we got this. And that was vital to, especially, in the last 6 months writing this book. It was really hard, and it took way more time, way more energy than I thought it was going to. Because you don't know until you do it.
Yes.
But, and he was patient all through all of that. And, thank God for him, because neither me nor the children would have had any food if he hadn't just totally picked up the pieces where I was essentially dropping the ball.
Yeah. And, what else I like before we move on to talking more about the strength finders is knowing that if you feel that you're not getting a certain support from one place, that you do have another circle that you can tap into to get the support that that you're specifically needing.
Yeah.
So that's a really huge piece.
Yeah. And I think that's tough for people who have their businesses out of their home, right? Who office out of their home, that it's important to seek out that extra support, because it's really easy. It's really easy to stick yourself in your home office and never see anybody. And then you really do feel like, a lone island, and that's not a great place for an entrepreneur to run their business from.
Yeah, exactly. But now let's take a shift over, because that support part is really important. But now we're going to go from support to strengths. Why are you so passionate about the Strengths Finders profile that you started a podcast about it?
Yeah. So it's funny, because I really believe this goes back to my healthcare background. I think Myers-Briggs is fantastic. I think DISC is great. The reason that I love the Strengths Finder profile is that 40 years of research went into the validity of this profile. In nursing, it's all about best practice. It's all about what's proven, right? It's all research based, right? All the best practices are research based. And for me, struggling so much with my self-worth for the first 3+ decades of my life, really having a profile that had 40 years of research to back it up, to say, hey, this is valid. This is true. It helped me to really own that as truth, so that when I looked at my top 5, which is where I started, which is where I encourage most people to start, is I could say, okay, so these don't feel like anything special to me, but they're saying that these are my talents. These are the things that I really excel at. And for most people, they'll read it and they'll go, well, yeah, this is spot on. What they don't necessarily realize is that those things are unique to them. And not everybody can do those things, because they look at their top 5 and like, well, yeah, everybody does this. Like, this is what everybody. No.
Yeah.
Those top 5 are truly unique to you. And it's part of what makes you so freaking awesome. And, for us to be able to own that, it helps us to stand up taller, shine brighter, and not take away from anybody else's brightness, right? So you and I have different strengths, but I'm awesome and you're awesome. And we can both be equally awesome without detracting light from one another. And it's not an arrogance thing. It's just, wow, we are all built so amazingly. Thank God we're not all the same.
Yeah. And people get caught up in comparing themselves thinking, oh my gosh, nobody's going to like me because I should be more like that.
Yes.
Right?
Totally. Yes.
So I'm going to pull out my top 5 because I've had the stickers that go with it.
Yay.
So I want to share them with you because I thought, what better way than if this was the right thing that I was pulling off the shelf, that I could be your test subject.
Yes. Awesome.
All right. So my number 1 is restorative. Number 2 is achiever. Number 3 is responsibility.
Okay.
4 is intellection. And 5 is input.
I love it. So great.
So take it away so you can share with our listeners of what would you do with that once you've realized that this is a person's strengths.
Yeah. So I'll kind of give a little debrief about what your strengths are. So there are 34 defined strength themes. Your top 3, restorative, achiever, and responsibility, are all executing themes, which means they get stuff done. Okay. Intellection and input are thinking themes. So intellection is a very deep thinker. Input is like, give me more. I just want more. So input folks tend to gather information, almost like people gather trinkets, right? If they have collections, they just gather. Restorative is all about restoring something to the whole. So I can totally see how that served you, not only in your nursing practice, right? Because we want to restore people to their health, but also in your coaching practice where you're going to out like, hey, what's not working here? And so folks with high restorative are really good at finding the core problem and then going, hey, let's solve this problem. So they're good investigators, as you mentioned earlier, which is so funny. I wonder if she's got restorative because you're talking about investigation.
I love investigation.
Yes. And that investigation piece, that comes from your, not only your input, but your restorative playing together. Right?
Yeah.
So, and it's just, it gives you energy, like it gives you that buzz, right?
Yeah.
Achiever is all about getting stuff done. So, and each day you tend to start at 0 again. Like you might have gotten a ton of stuff done yesterday, but now today, like you're at ground 0. So achiever, one of the things that, if we call strengths envy, right? When we see someone who's got a strength that, I just wish I was wired like that. There's times when I have a little bit of strengths envy on achiever. That's at like number 17 for me. I've unlocked all my 34, which again is not necessary to really get value out of the StrengthsFinder profile, but because I dive so deep and I live this every day I have. Achiever has incredible stamina. So it can work and work and work. It's really that workhorse and can check more stuff off the list than anybody. And so when stuff needs to really get done, you ask someone with high achiever in their profile. Achiever can also burn out. Of course, we can overuse that strength, but it's the stamina behind achiever is so amazing. And I just honor and cherish that. My husband has achiever in his top 5. Woohoo! Responsibility is a theme that's all about ownership, right? So if something needs to get done, you're the woman who stands up and says, hey, I got this. And once you say that, you will always follow through. You're a woman of your word, and you're gonna make sure that it gets done. Now, it can also, if you're working in a team, when you see someone else drop the ball, you're like, okay, clearly that person doesn't get it. Let me go get it. And now I'll take this on too. So responsibility combined with achiever, right, could end up taking ownership over stuff that they really shouldn't, or that really isn't theirs to have. And then you find that the weight of the world is on your shoulders. Mm-hmm. So again, not that it's a bad thing, but it's just something to be aware of, because it can lead to burnout. And so, the art of saying no is something that that people with responsibility and achiever really need to become okay with, the skill of saying no. And like I said, intellection is that deep thinker, philosophical, you could mull over, something in the world, and who knows what it would be, right? It could be anything that you just really process through. And then combined with input, who loves to gather stuff, you might find yourself down a 7-hour Google hole, researching stuff. But really, really amazing. And what's so get executing strengths and thinking strengths. You think, well, there's no people strengths there. There's no relationship building. There's no influencing strengths in there. But here's the thing, is that it doesn't mean that you don't create great relationships. It means that you create great relationships and support people through your top 5. So you use that restorative to connect with people and say, hey, how can I help? What can I do to help you? What would serve you, right? Through maybe solving a pain point for somebody, right? So it doesn't mean you don't have compassion or any of those. You absolutely use those things. But I have none of these strengths in my top 5. In fact, I have none of those strengths in my top 10. So here we have the same background, right? Both and then transition to coaching. And we both do very, very well and serve our clients amazingly, but have none of the same strengths. So this is why we don't encourage people to use the StrengthsFinder profile for career choice.
I'm so excited that you were able to just, take my top 5 and flush it out for our listeners.
Yeah.
To demonstrate how different we are, yet I just felt this synergy as we started our conversation, that I was like, totally. Oh, maybe we should start recording.
Yes. And we could have talked for an hour before we started recording.
So, and I can really feel your passion about, so many people are looking at their weaknesses and how I need to improve, but really focusing and maximizing your strengths is where the deal is at.
It is. And it doesn't mean you ignore your weaknesses, nor does it mean that you use them as cop-outs, right? So, for instance, I should probably share my top 5. I'll share my top 5 and then I'll go into my story. So my top 5 are futuristic. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm blanking on my own strengths. Futuristic. Holy schmoly. I need another cup of coffee. Woo. Woo stands for winning others over. So woo has an ability to make an immediate connection with complete strangers. Like, my favorite thing is walking into a room of strangers. Because I'm like, oh, all these friends I haven't met yet. Okay, well, I'm about to. Number 3 is positivity. Number 4 is activator. So I love to get into action, and I love to encourage others to get into action. In fact, it's a caveat to my coaching practice, to who I take on as clients, is, are you ready to take action on the things that come out during our sessions? Because if you're not, that's okay. If you're still in, comprehension mode, but I'm not the right coach for you, because part of what I need as a coach is to see the action and the results on my client's end. Right. Anyway, so that's just one little bit about how my strengths lead into my coaching practice. And then number 5 is strategic. So I can make a quick decision between 2 things, like, is this a better option or this better option? So those are my top 5. But my number 34, so my lowest of low strengths, so the deepest, most difficult to access, is one called consistency. And consistency shows up in 2 main ways. Number 1, in fairness, right? So consistency is all about treating everybody fairly. Like, if you get, $20 for Christmas, you're going to get $20 for Christmas. And it might be 2 different gifts, but darn it, those dollar amounts are going to be exactly the same. Right. And it also shows up in consistency of routine, which I'm not. And I even talk about this in the book. Like I don't even brush my teeth or floss my teeth in the same order. Like sometimes I'll floss my teeth first and sometimes I'll brush my teeth and, whatever. Sometimes I'll do it right after dinner. And sometimes I fall asleep on the couch and then I brush my teeth later. I have no real routine doesn't appeal to me. It's just not something that comes easily. So now I could use that as a cop out and say, well, I just can't do anything consistently. I guess I can't run a business because you have to do things consistently. I could use it as a cop out. That's not the right thing. Right. So you identify what your weaknesses are, not because you just throw your hands up in the air and go, well, I'm just not wired that way. But now I go, okay, so where can I get that support because I don't have it wired? So I hired a processes consultant to help me get some good processes in place because I don't have that strength. So I need to reach outside of myself. So I don't use it as an excuse to cop out, but I do use it as a way to root out who do I need to support me in my circle.
That's a huge shift for people because right away they can use that as a cop out. It's their excuse. They use it as the rationale for why they don't follow through on something. And realizing that if it's someone else's gift, why not have that person help you and put it into place so it doesn't feel like you're working so hard to bring that up.
Yes. And it's not that I can't be consistent. It just sucks energy out of me. It's not fun. I don't like it. And someone with high consistency is like, oh my God, that's the only way that you could possibly function, right? Because it is their easy button. It gives them energy to know, all right, every morning I have 2 pieces of toast with peanut butter. Like that's their gig. And it gives them this peace and this, all right, all is right in the world. Right. So you can see how those 2 different things, but I could never live that way, not because it's wrong, but because it's not how I'm wired.
Yeah. So when you think of a strength-based culture, when it comes to organizations or people running their businesses, why is building this strength base into a company culture so important?
It has everything to do with how you're going about your day-to-day. Right. So if you think about if the stuff that you're doing and how you're doing it, because strengths really is not about what you're doing, but how you're doing it. Excuse me. And so if your how of what you're doing day to day is sucking energy out of you, you're less productive, you're less energetic, you're certainly less happy. And the fact of the matter is that in this day and age, people will leave. They'll, or worse, they'll stay, right? And not be productive in their company. And they're going to drag people down around them. And alternatively, if they get to frame up how they do their business or how they do their day-to-day work, and they feel valuable. Because that's the thing is that when I can stand up and say, okay, so my activator is super valuable in this organization, because when we're in a meeting, it's like, okay, guys, great. We got this done. Now let's get into action, right? Now, but if I wasn't able to close the meeting, right? So if I'm given that latitude to close the meeting and give like the pep hoorah rah, and like, just go back to your desk. Well, it shuts my activator down. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to just go back to my desk and just do my work. Right. So everything in the organization is shut down. But if that contribution is honored, now I feel like a valuable part of the team. And if I feel like a valuable part of the team and like I'm actually contributing, the chances of me staying are pretty high. The chances of me working my butt off to make sure that the company succeeds are higher. Right. And so, and if I happen to grow in such a way that I now leave the organization, right, I'm going to leave the organization with a great taste in my mouth. I'm going to leave the organization better off than I started it. And everybody's going to be better off for it. And I'll have stayed a lot longer in the company than I would have otherwise. Yes. So, the percentages of a strengths-based culture, in improvement of productivity and, employee satisfaction, is off the charts different. And it transitions into dollars.
And, the biggest thing that I notice with this, as I'm listening to you, as you build that strength-based culture and people are valued for what they bring to the organization, because that's often why people leave. Some people will say they don't leave the organization, they leave a manager. But it's also about feeling valued and appreciated for the gifts. And, sometimes in business, we don't want to hear the word gift, but your unique talent and ability that you bring to the workplace.
Yeah.
But the retention is such, in employee engagement and retention is such a big topic right now. And people are wondering, how can we get to retain our talent here? And part of the thing that I see is they're not tapping into some of those unique abilities that they have, because they see themselves as pigeonholed sometimes by the degree that they have, the experiences that they only know that they do within the organization, but not the skills and talents that they've honed outside of the organization that they bring.
Right. Right. You're exactly right. And sometimes it does also mean a shift in job responsibilities. Somebody with analytical in their top 5, give them a spreadsheet and have them analyze that data, and they'll eat that up all day long. I would puke all over that data. Like it has no interest to me. Now the results of it, great. Tell me what the results are. And now I can get people into action to help, improve the numbers or whatever, right? Like I can do that. And I can put a positive spin on any data, but someone else can analyze it, right? Yeah. So if analyzing that data is part of my job, and Susie over here has analytical, but her job is to rally the troops. Like, we need to switch that role, because she is going to thrive more here. I'm going to thrive more there. We're going to spend less time and energy doing both of those things, which is saving the company money. And we're both going to be able to actually contribute in ways that get us excited. And here's where it becomes a strength. So all of your StrengthsFinder talent themes, they really are talent. They're not a strength until it's giving you energy, getting you kind of excited and like putting you on that buzz, and giving energy to other people. That's when it's become a talent. And I equate it to a talented gymnast, right? So gymnastics is in my background. It's in my blood. So I equate everything to gymnastics. But at age 4, you can see talent in a kid. Okay, but she's not an Olympic gymnast yet, right? So she has to go through that growth stage in the training in order for it to become now a strength. And now she's that Olympic gymnast, right? Years later. But early on, it is just a talent, and it might not be, it might be more of a raw talent. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And as you're talking, all I could think about is, how I talked about liking the investigative part. That's the part that gives me energy. Well, yeah. When you give me a problem, if you allow me to brainstorm this problem and come up finding solutions, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Like my energy could be through the roof.
See, isn't that so exciting? And our strengths, they play together. So that's your intellection, it's your input, and it's your restorative, and they're all playing together. So what's even cooler about strengths, I get really excited. I'm sorry.
No, I love this. I love it.
Is that red plus yellow equals orange. So now your strengths have an opportunity to come together. And yes, there's 34 defined strengths, but when they come together and play, the opportunities are endless. And it just feeds more into how unique and amazing we all are in our own ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we talked a lot about your strengths, my strengths. But when our listeners get their results, how can they start using that practical application? Because right away people are going to go, well, yeah, that's all great in theory.
Right.
So where do we go with that to actually apply once we know with it? What do we do with that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Like, what is the first thing? Number one is read the reports that Gallup gives you. Like, those are free, and they give you 2 different reports, which are really fantastic. And what's neat about the reports that they give you is they actually frame it for your top 5. Remember how I said one strength and another strength, they play together. And so their report is not just strength 1, strength 2, strength 3, strength 4, and 5, but it's a combination of those. So read those reports because they'll give you in more insight. Read the book. The book itself is actually fairly short, and then it goes through and has small chapters on each one of the strengths. So read the small chapters on each one of your top 5. Second thing I would do is go to somebody you trust and say, hey, this is what my profile showed Do you see these things in me? Right. So because we tend to have our own view of ourselves, right? And it's skewed, but it's nice to have the view of somebody outside of us. So not somebody that, has always been hypercritical of you, or, that's going to crush you, or any of that. Somebody that you trust, that can give you some insight on that. And then I would say, keep those. There's actually an app. There's an app both on Android and on iPhones from Gallup, and you can actually download that. So you have your top 5 right there, because you're not going to remember. I mean, I'm immersed in this stuff, and all of a sudden I had a brain fart on what my number 2 strength is. So sometimes it's nice to be able to pull up what are your top 5, right? And just to remember those. And I would say, like I said, our strengths, they have contributions that they bring, and they also have needs. I talked about what I need in my clients. So it gives you space to actually ask for what you need and offer what you can contribute. So really understanding those. Every time you become frustrated, look at those strengths. Because when you become frustrated or triggered, it's because one of your strengths has needs that aren't met or contributions that aren't honored. And so now you can look at those frustrating experiences and go, I'm going to remove my emotion from it just a little bit to go, hey, what's going on here? And it also will then help you to go, hey, what I really need is I need some positive feedback. So I hear a lot of your negative stuff right now. So my positivity needs that positive feedback. Thank you for sharing all the things that are wrong with me. Can you tell me anything that's right? Right. So like if someone's critiquing your work, and this can happen with restorative, just by the way. So restorative is looking for what's broken in the root problem, right? The root cause, to root it out. And so sometimes restorative and positivity can catch it ahead, because positivity is looking at the 95% that's right, and restorative is looking at that 5% that's not right. Yeah. And so understanding that, so that I can go, oh, okay, Deborah, so you're looking at what the root cause is. I love that, because then we can restore it to whole. And you're going, I'm so glad that you're looking at all that's positive. Now, if we fix this one little thing, it can be all positive.
Yeah.
Right? So helping those strengths in different people to work together. So understanding your strengths and really diving into those reports, will help you to actually apply it, because all is lost if it's not applied. So, and then of course you can hire a coach that can help you work through those things. And that's what I do with my clients, to really help them, thrive through that, because it is a process. And that's what I do, when I come in and I train teams is, this is everybody's strengths. Now, instead of using those as labels on each other, we all have enough labels. Let's use as expansive. Right? So not as prescriptive, like, oh, you've got command, you're this and this and this, but hey, you've got command. Our group here can't make a decision. Can you step in and be decisive? Right? So using them expansively rather than as putting you in a box.
And I love how you say that, because I've done different tests. Like, we shared my strength finder. I've done DISC. I'm an ID.
Me too.
Oh, there you go. But what I find is, I've done insights, discovery, personality, and I'm a red, blue, but what I find is once people know them, that they do suddenly put them in that definition and a box that we label ourselves and say, well, I'm not analytical, I'm not this, or I'm not that. But really coming from a place of seeing how powerful, and as you said, how freaking awesome you are, because of the strengths that you show up in. Because if we were all the same, how boring would that be? So for everyone listening and watching, I really want you to think about how awesome you are because of who you are. No one else is like you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Literally nobody who has ever lived and no one who will ever live will ever be like you. You are the only one.
I love that, Alissa. Thanks so much for that. We're going to shift now. We're going to make another shift because I want to learn more about your brand new book. I'm really excited, as a busy mom and mother and business owner. What was the process of writing your first book like for you?
It was exactly like the decision to have a baby, and then pregnancy, and then the first year of baby. Like, that is legit what it felt like. Like, this is a great idea. Let's write a book. Like, hey, this is a great idea. Let's have a baby. Everybody does it. We can do it too. And then you get into it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really hard, right? First trimester. So I won't go through the whole analogy, but I'm actually in the midst of writing a long blog post about the similarities between having a baby and writing a book. So, I knew that this book was inside of me. And, I read a lot of books, listen to a lot of audiobooks, and a lot of our self-development books that are out there give you hoorah-rah. And, I'm absolutely encouraging and give a lot of that. But at the end of the book, it's like, okay, so you just, spent 200 pages telling me I'm great. Now what? And you shut the book, and all of a sudden it's like it deflates, right? Because again, you don't have necessarily any proof to it. Like, well, they just told me I'm great. So, okay. And again, you're lost with the now what? And so, because of my very pragmatic approach, which I do believe has a lot to do with my nursing background, I wanted to give people proof in black and white that they are not only unique, but awesome. Right? Because sometimes you can say, yeah, I'm unique, and it's not necessarily a compliment, right?
Yeah.
So unique and awesome. And so the first portion of the book is really vetting that out. And so there's several exercises that I take people through to actually journal out in black and white with graphite pencil or on the screen, however you like to do it. These are all the things that make you uniquely awesome. So when you're having those down days, you can reflect back on that and go, but you know what? This is real. This is true. And if that's true, then I must not be a POS, right? Excuse my language. I didn't say the bad words, right? So I must not be horrible. I must just be having, a hormonal day or something, right?
Yeah.
And so I take people through that process of really helping them understand who they are. And then I help them plan. So the second portion of the book is planning and implementing all of those awesome things. What does that mean for how I do my business? It is directed and written for the entrepreneur, but in all honesty, if you're a stay-at-home mom, this is also applicable. If you are a full-time charge nurse, like, this is also applicable, because you have other goals. I have people make goals in 6 different areas because, our businesses don't exist in a vacuum. Our relationships are important. You can have the most successful business in the whole wide world, but if your marriage is falling apart, or you have no friends and you have no social outlet, or your kids are falling apart, does it really matter? Right? So helping them to have goals in all of those areas so that our life is in harmony. Not in balance, because I don't believe there is such a thing. I really don't, which is probably a topic for a whole nother day. But we can let our lives and our businesses and or work, career, whatever, work in harmony. So I lead them through a four-step process. And that 4-step process is intended to be repeated every 3 months. Because guess what? Every 3 months, you're going to learn something new about you. You're going to have more to add to how awesome you are. You're going to have discovery. You're going to have failures, which you have the opportunity now to learn from. And you're going to figure out, well, how am I doing on these goals? So if you're reflecting every 3 months in a deep way on your 6-month or 12-month goals, guess what? You have a much better chance at actually achieving those goals. So it's a perfect book for a book club. It's a perfect book for a mastermind to work through, because it has all the steps for the accountability, has all the steps for, when to reflect back and how do I track? And so what am I looking for? It's really a rich book in a very small little package, because I wanted it to be something, again, people could go back to every 3 months. So I wasn't going to make it a 200-page book.
And, I think it's so important. And it's about that nursing process, how we're assessing the situation. This is where coaching and nursing, the background, is so in alignment, because we're assessing the situation. We're looking at what interventions need to be done. We're looking, constantly assessing, creating a plan, adjusting the interventions, but also evaluating the process at the end of it.
Yes.
And, if someone was to question, credibility, and it was like, we do this, it's integrated into who we are and everything that we're doing. But what I love is how you integrate the strengths, how you are using it in this 4-step process to really guide people through using that process for themselves and evaluating and thinking about the interventions that are going to work for them.
That's right. That's right. Because, having a mentor, having somebody you look up to, is important. It helps you to develop benchmarks, who has come before me and what have they done, right? So you can develop benchmarks there. But if you follow their exact path, you're going to fail. Why? Because you don't have the same strengths as they do, right? So I might look at you, Deborah, and go, oh my God, and I do, like, you're amazing. All the things that you do and all of that. But if I were to come to your home office and go, I'm just going to duplicate everything she does because whatever she's doing, it's working, it would not work for me. Why? Because you have different strengths than I have. So your how is going to be different. And if I just try to duplicate that and be a second rate of you, right? Or be a second version of you, I'm going to wind up not only unhappy, but also an ultimate failure. And then we internalize it and go, God, there's something must be wrong with me. No, you're just not Deborah. You're Alissa, right?
So what are 3 things that you would recommend to someone who gets caught into that comparison trap? Basically saying, I need to do what she's doing because look what she's doing. Because again, you're Superwoman.
Right. Superwoman.
So what are 3 things that people can say, oh, I can catch myself. I see myself comparing myself to others. And, I've listened to that podcast with Deborah and Alissa, and I remembered this is what they talked about. What would be 3 things that you would share with them?
Yeah, it's hard, and we all fall into this. So number 1, I would say recognize that is a normal reaction. And I would say the first thing, whenever you come across either judgment or jealousy. So judgment is when you think you're better than them, right? And jealousy is when you think they're better than you. So either way, it's a comparison deal. So replace the judgment or the jealousy with curiosity. So ask yourself the question, what strengths are they bringing forward that I am noticing that I think are so amazing? Right? So that's one thing you can do. And because notice it in them and honor that in them. Say, wow, you're really amazing in this thing, right? However, whatever it is that you're sort of jealous of, right? And then go back to, well, where am I awesome? Pull up that app on your phone and remember why you're awesome. That's why I have people write all these things down, because in the emotional midst of comparison moment, we forget all that. It's all out the window. None of that matters because what they have is great. So remembering what it is that makes you great. And now if you do want what they have, figure out a process or a support, or maybe engage that exact person to figure out how can I lean into their strengths to get that result, right? So my processes consultant, I should name drop her because she's amazing. Dawn Sinkula. She's absolutely amazing. She has discipline, which helps to put a structure around things, right? Which is why she's so great at processes. So I lean into her strengths to get what I need, which is process, right? So whatever that other person needs, lean into their strengths. Remember that we are built to be in community. We are not meant to be well-rounded. I am so adamant about this point. Our country, and I'm sure Canada is exactly this way too, tells us that we're supposed to be well-rounded. That's what we're taught from kindergarten, right? You have to do all of these classes and everything else. And there's some things like you need to be able to balance a checkbook, right? So even if you're not a math person, you do need like elementary and high school math. So there's certain things that you need to have done in order to be a functioning person in society. But we were never built to be well-rounded. So as you're jealous of somebody else, go, thank God they're different than I am, because without that, we wouldn't be able to function as a society. Like if we were built to be a species that lived all on our own, and there are species out there that they don't live in herds or anything else. Human beings are not one of those species. We are built to live in community. Why? And this is why I believe that we don't have all 34 strengths in equality, is because if we did, I wouldn't need you. You wouldn't need me, and we wouldn't need anybody else, because we had it all. But thank God that we don't, because it forces us to lean on to one another, create those relationships so that in synergy, we can all achieve more. So I don't know. I think that was 2 things, but I talked a long time. So.
That's okay. That's okay. Because I really do think that people who are listening or watching need to hear this message that, you know, even though we see people as having things that we don't have, recognizing, and I love how you use judgment and jealousy, because those are the 2 places that you come from. Yeah. And I have a book coming out in September that is so about curiosity. So
I know, I love it. I love it. I love it. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
How you segued into that too. And it's so important to be curious, and not only about what the other person brings to the table, but how your strengths can really shift and lean on them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And really also remember that you have something that they don't, right? So even the most successful of all people that you might put on this pedestal, you have something that they don't have. And you're comparing their highlight reel with your unedited version. And that's never a fair comparison. Never a fair comparison. So remember that too, like in this Facebook world of ours where people are posting all the stuff. Guess what? Typically, I'm not going to post when my child has a total meltdown and I feel like a failure of a parent, right? I'm not going to be like, oh, hey, guess what? This happened today. And I mean, there are some times where it's sort of funny. Like I remember one morning I dropped my coffee on the floor. I mean, my mug shattered everywhere. There was coffee everywhere. And I was like, oh, well, this is how my morning's going. And I posted that on Facebook because it was sort of funny. But typically we're not posting those crappy mornings on Facebook. We're posting, look at our kids and their Easter best, right? Yes. So remember that. And it's not that people are always trying to be fake, right? But you know what? And for me, as with my positivity, I just don't find a need to share all the crap. I don't want to do that because it's not positive. And so it's not that people are trying to be fake. It's just that they're not going to put their dirty laundry out there, because why would they? So remember that there's always an unedited version on the other side too.
And it's also what we focus on expands.
Yes.
So if I want to focus on, talking politics or smashing, somebody unfriended me, like really?
Yeah, please don't. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, don't be that guy or gal, because what you're focusing on is going to expand, and there's going to be more and more that's going to be in your attention. I also know that you don't believe in the notion of work-life balance. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So, balanced, when people think about balance, they think about compartmentalization. That's really what they're thinking about is, okay, so I've had work and now I'm going to have family. Well, if you have a phone, you can't do that. Okay. Because most of the time you're going to be getting your work email on your phone. Someone is going to call you from work or from a client at 8:00 at night or whatever. And yes, you can set boundaries around those things. I am not going to return an email after 5 p.m. That can be done the next day. Fine. You can set those boundaries, but remember that you have one brain. So even if you try to shut work off after 5 p.m., like your brain is still working on work stuff and that kind of stuff. And you can sort of set it aside, do a meditation clearing and all of that stuff. So I'm not saying those things aren't valuable, but they don't exist in a vacuum. And that's the bigger thing, is that when we compartmentalize, we're not really leaving work at work. Like if we had a horrible experience at work, or we, had a fight with our husband in the morning, it does affect us, even if we jam it down. So just recognize that what we want is for those things to live in harmony. So, my kids, I have a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old. And so they're not little. And ever since they were old enough to really help me out, right? I engage them in accountability. So when we have our one-on-one time, I tell them, you have permission to drag me out of my office, because I tend to come right into my office and go, I'll just return this quick email, right? It's not because I'm a bad mom. I'm a great mom. But I feel that responsibility for my clients or responding to emails. So I give them that I empower them to say, Mom, get out of your office. This is my time, right? Put your phone down, Mom. This is my time. You don't need to take that call right now, Mom. This is my time, right? So I know this is a boundary I've set, but it's still really easy to get pulled back into, but it's just one quick little email. And like, this is my 3 hours. Right. Yes. So, that accountability, whether it's from a 9-year-old or whether it's from an accountability partner or your spouse, whoever, to help keep those boundaries. But, I have a family, and that's part of who I am. I am a mom. I am a wife, all of those things. I am a friend. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter, but I'm also a business owner. I'm also a coach. I'm also a client of all those other things. So, it's not going to ever be in balance, but you can make them work together so that you are really living in harmony. So think of all those different roles as being different instruments, right? And so when they're all playing their own tune, it sounds terrible. And they're all playing tunes all the time. But if you can get them to work in harmony, now you have a symphony, and it's beautiful.
Yeah,
so that's
great analogy.
Yeah.
So we're winding down to then, because I know we're going to have to meet in person, because I'm telling you.
I know. I'm so excited
for hours. What are the 4 steps to the freaking awesome process that you talk about in your book? And I want you to just tell us about the book in general.
Okay. So I already mentioned kind of what the book is sort of broken into 2 parts: know yourself and then get your butt into action, right? But the 4 steps are knowing yourself. So going back through those exercises to really understand yourself and to really know what sets you apart as somebody who's uniquely awesome. Know yourself. And I do it in a clock, because I want this to be cyclical. This isn't a one-time process, one and done. It is something that you can come back to, because the growth never ends, right? Okay. So know yourself. And then I'm going to see if I can do this in the right way here. I don't know if this is 3:00 to you, but the next is planning. And oftentimes we get right into action, and especially me with my activator, right? But that planning process and taking that time to go, okay, knowing this, what are my goals for real? And really planning that out. Step 3 is taking action, which seems silly, but sometimes we dream a lot and then don't take action, or we take action and we don't plan this out, right? So step 3 is take action. And then that step 4 is reflection and learning. Because if we skip this step, then we're, all of the failures that we might have had, all the successes we might have had, we're not going to be able to duplicate the success or scale the success or learn from our failures if we don't do this process. And so then the reflection process goes right back into knowing yourself. All right, what did I learn about myself in the last 3 months? And so it really is, it's a 4-step cyclical process that you can go through until you leave this blessed earth. And every time you go through it, you're going to learn more, you're going to hone in more. And so what it does, instead of feeling like that rat on a wheel, right, you're actually spiraling up. And so that is what the 4-step process is all about in the book.
Awesome. And so what is one piece of advice that you would love to leave our listeners with about when it comes to maximizing strengths or creating the harmony that you talked about? What would be one thing that you want to ensure that they know leaving this podcast today?
Yeah. Well, number one, go get your profile done. It's $15. It's 30 minutes of your time. And the statistics from Gallup are just by doing the profile and spending any time learning it, you're going to increase your productivity by 7%. Like if I can spend 30 minutes and increase my overall productivity by 7%, granted, I would like to increase my productivity by 100%, right? But if I can spend 30 minutes to increase by 7%, that's an investment well worth it anyway. And then just get curious, but get curious about yourself first and foremost. And then get Deborah's book when it comes out in September. but just so recognize that you are already built amazingly. So get curious about all the reasons why. And when you start there, now you can internalize that. And now you can but the hard part is that you can't do that for others until you've done it for yourself. So now that I've really internalized just how great I am, right? And not from a place of arrogance, but from a place of awe. Now I can do the same thing for you, Deborah, and I can do the same thing for others, because if the same is true for me, it's true for them too. They're amazing too.
Yeah. Well, I think you are frickin' awesome.
Thank you. I think you're frickin' awesome too.
How can people get a hold of your book? And I know you have something special for our listeners and guests.
I do have something special for you. So you can go to daire2succeed.com. That's where you'll find me. I'm certainly on social media as well. And I'll make sure to get Deborah my links to Twitter and all that good stuff as well. But so Daire is like my maiden name, who I was put on this earth as, and it's DAIRE, 2, succeed.com. So daire2succeed.com. And if you go to daire2succeed.com /MW show for the Millionaire Women Show, you can get 2 free chapters of the book. So you can get a feel for what the book is like. And if you love it, you can grab it on Amazon. So again, DAIRE, 2, succeed /MW show. And you'll be able to grab the first 2 chapters of the book and see if it resonates. And I would be honored if you would pick it up on Amazon.
I'm assured that this book is going to be a bestseller because, having simple processes, and, this is coming from a girl who says she doesn't use process, but she does, because I know as a nurse, you're used to using certain processes. Doesn't mean we always like them, or there's certain ones, but you've created a system that is really going to be a game changer for anyone. And it really does, starting with leading yourself. Really focusing on who you are, what you want to achieve, and moving forward from there. And that's huge because the planning is so much easier when you start knowing who you are and what you want to achieve. And you don't have to be like everyone else.
Yeah. Amen. And please don't be like everyone else. It makes this world too vanilla. We have such richness in our world. And when we can just really soak that in and appreciate it, man, what a cool world we have.
Sorry, the first thing that came to my mind is like, well, not vanilla, but maybe tiramisu, where there's a whole bunch of different flavors playing around.
Yeah, I mix metaphors all the time. So now we're going to go in for a rainbow, and
I'm thinking about food now. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Maybe vanilla and Dippin' Dots, with all the little fun colors or something like that.
But there's a mixture, and just knowing that you have some amazing strengths. And thank you so much, Alissa, for coming on the show. I am so grateful that you are here. And I need people, go out and, do your profile, grab Alissa's book, work in tandem with this, because I know that it's really going to make a big shift. I think it's so important to come from a positive focus. And maybe this is something that I've built in, or maybe it's one of my other strengths is that, I've worked in appreciative inquiry. I work with emotional intelligence. And even though I am see a problem, I come from a solution-focused approach and trying to look for that positive result. Yeah. Because the weaknesses are there, but there's so many other people that's their strength, and we really need to be tapping into that.
Yes, so true.
True. So thank you everyone for coming on the Millionaire Woman Show. And this is another wrap. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Check out Alissa, Daire Nelson on the search boxes, and we'll have her links as well. But really reach out, connect with people, sharing what you've learned from this podcast. email Alissa or email myself at Deborah@deborahkozowski.com. Go to my website. There's a contact page if you can't figure that out, or you just want to leave a different message. That's great. Go over to the Millionaire Woman Show podcast. Again, give us a 5-star high five, write us a review, share this with your friends, because this one podcast episode could be a game changer for them. And we don't want you to miss out. Grab those 2 chapters of Alissa's book. Start taking action. This is what this podcast is all about. We want to share high-value content with you, but we want you to take a nugget that you're going to actually apply and do something with. You're going to learn principles of leadership, business, and human potential that are going to help you live rich from the inside out. As Muhammad Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. And my line is, make today great. Have a great day, everyone.